All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're diving into a really incredible story, one from a source that claims the entire world was secretly sold, and it was all done using just a single document.
So let me ask you this. How would you buy the world, right? I mean, you're not going to do it with armies or with some massive pile of cash or, a big flashy global announcement. No, according to this story, you do it quietly. You hide the sale of literally every single NATO and UN member state inside a document that just looks like a boring old real estate contract for a piece of property in Germany. Okay, let's get into it. Section 1, the contract that sold the world. All right, so the document at the heart of all this is called Deed 1400/98. Now, the source material is very clear. This wasn't just some property sale. They call it a state succession deed. Think of it, allegedly, as a kind of add-on or supplement to the NATO Status of Forces Agreement. And the story goes even further. It claims that this deed was actually ratified by Germany's parliament. That would make it an official document, one that supposedly transferred the sovereignty of all NATO and UN countries to just one person. So here's the absolute core of the argument from the source. It's all about the difference between a private contract and an international treaty. The claim is that this was deliberately made to look like a simple private contract, to trick the buyer. But in reality, it was structured as an international treaty. And how could they do that? Well, because more than one country was involved. You had Germany selling it, but the Netherlands was also still using the former NATO base. The real kicker, though, is this one phrase. The property was sold with all rights, duties, and components. According to the source, that's the code. That phrase, all rights, didn't just mean the land and buildings. It meant the sovereign rights that went along with that NATO base. Now, for a plan this big and this complicated, you need a very special kind of person at the center of it. You need the perfect straw man. And that brings us to Section 2. We're talking about a key player who allegedly had no clue what they were getting into. So picture this. The story kicks off back in 1995. You've got a 19-year-old fresh out of school who gets a job marketing an old military base. Fast forward just 3 years to October 1998. He's the guy signing Deed 1400/98, thinking, hey, this is just a big real estate deal. But here's the thing. According to the source, that signature triggered a secret 2-year countdown. And when that clock hit 0 in October of 2000, the whole deal allegedly became legally irreversible. No takebacks. Yeah, the source actually has a quote from the buyer after he supposedly figured it all out. He says, "I was the fool, the straw man, without knowing it." I mean, the whole claim is that he was picked for a reason, specifically because he was young, inexperienced, and the perfect person to be the front man for something this huge. Which brings us to the big why, right? Why go through all this trouble? What was the point of such a twisted, complicated plan? Well, this leads us to Section 3, Germany's NWO plot. According to the source, the endgame was a secret plot to create a new world order. Okay, so how could this possibly work? The source calls it the domino effect. Let's walk through it. Step 1, sell the base with all its components. Simple enough. Step 2, define those components to include things like its telecom networks. Now here's where it gets really clever. Step 3, those networks, they weren't just local. They were tied into global NATO and UN infrastructure, all regulated by a UN agency. So the source claims that because every country kept using this massive interconnected network, they were all technically fulfilling a part of the contract without even knowing it. And apparently, in international law, if you fulfill even a tiny part of a treaty, you're on the hook for the whole thing. And so, Step 4, boom. Sovereignty over the entire global network gets transferred. So the full plan, as the source lays it out, was this brilliant, diabolical two-step trap. First, you transfer global sovereignty to this totally unsuspecting buyer. Then you lean on him, pressure him to sign a second, really minor-looking contract. But that little contract would secretly transfer all those global rights right back to Germany. It was meant to be a secret backdoor takeover of, well, everything. It's a breathtaking plan, for sure. Just absolutely audacious. But according to the source, it all fell apart. It failed because of a massive, unexpected twist. And that brings us to Section 4, a sabotaged world takeover. And the source material itself puts it perfectly. borrowing a line from a pretty famous song, "Oh baby, it's a sabotage." The source describes this completely wild scene. The buyer's mother goes to a notary's office to get some original documents, and she's allegedly attacked by an agent provocateur. But the chaos was the point. The claim is that this whole incident was staged by foreign intelligence services so they could swap in a fake contract, a forgery that made it look like the rights were transferred back to Germany, fooling them into thinking their grand plan had actually worked.
So this alleged sabotage basically split reality in two. On one side, you have Germany supposedly believing the plan worked, thinking that the second contract is real, and operating as if it secretly holds all the power. But on the other side, the source claims the whole thing was foiled. That second contract is a total fake, and the original buyer, he still holds all the rights.
And this brings us right to the present day and into Section 5, The Man Who Resists. This is the story of one man's silent fight against a system that, according to this narrative, has to crush him to finish its master plan. So to force the buyer to finally sign over his rights, the source claims this unbelievable campaign of legal harassment was launched against him. We're talking over 1,000 baseless lawsuits filed in Germany. And the alleged persecution went way, way beyond the courtroom. The source claims he's had his property taken, he's been thrown in prison, put in solitary confinement, and even subjected to forced psychiatric commitment and torture. All of it, the story goes, was designed to do one thing: break him and make him sign away the rights. So after hearing all that, there is one massive, obvious question, right? If he's the victim of this huge injustice, why doesn't he just fight back? Why not file a lawsuit and expose the whole thing in court? Because according to this incredible story, that's exactly what they want him to do. It's the final trap. Filing that lawsuit would be the very last move in their game. And here it is, the checkmate scenario. The source claims that the moment the buyer files a lawsuit in a German court, he would be, by that very action, recognizing the court's jurisdiction over him and his rights. And that single act would legally complete the transfer of global sovereignty to the German state. Game over. Their plan would be finished. And so, the story ends on this absolutely staggering claim. The only thing protecting the world order as we know it is one man's silent, stubborn refusal to sue. It's a truly mind-bending story, isn't it? A meticulously detailed global conspiracy foiled at the last minute by foreign spies, leaving the fate of the entire world hanging on one man's inaction? Or is it the elaborate, tragic saga of one single person? We've explained the source material. What you take away from it, well, that's up to you.